Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk About Again. The last few times we've had an array of different topics. This evening we're gonna do a little bit of a recap of a conversation we had with Chris and Josie in June. We're actually going to be talking again about racism in the UK because it is obviously still an issue we need to talk about. And it's not something that we just we posted on social media about it for months. We talked a little bit, we were upset about it, and now we just get on back with our lives. But we really want to, again, keep this conversation going so that actually things can change fundamentally, that we can make changes that last and not just go back and slop back into our old habits. I'm here this evening with Phil, Josie, and Chris. Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. It is a real pleasure and privilege to have you and to continue this conversation. So Phil is my co-staff member, whatever, colleague, that's the word I was looking for. And Chris and Josie, would you guys be up for introducing yourselves again? Because I think probably people who are going to watch tonight might have not watched in June.
Yeah. So I'm Josie. I just finishing up my PhD at Surrey, but I am now also a clinical scientist working at hospital in Southampton. So, yeah.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
That is impressive. I'm Chris, and I get the joy of leading Hope Church in Guildford, which I've done now. I'm in year 3 of leading the leadership team that leads the church.
Wow, awesome.
What has been your highlight of these last 2 and a bit years of leading a church?
I think we did this fun day, right, where we just really punched above our weight, and we did this massive free day for the community where we had like animals and archery and bouncy castles and hot dogs and tea, cake, coffees, live music, and the whole church just came together to put on this free day, and we probably had in the hundreds and hundreds of people coming along, and that day just encapsulated something of, I guess, who we are, what we're about, and we're looking forward to doing one again when COVID allows.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds like so much fun. Josie, how is your work now? You've started recently.
Yeah.
Some work. How is it going in Southampton?
It's going really good. It's a bit weird to join the NHS during this time. But I'm definitely enjoying it. Currently, so basically it's also a part-time master's, so I'm kind of studying again. So yeah, but I've been doing...
You've just finishing your PhD and now you're doing a master's.
It comes with the job, so I'm very grateful for it. But yes, it does mean that I am studying again. But it's like a professional master's in my field as a clinical scientist, and so I'm just at the moment I'm in like a 6-week period of working from home while doing master's work, and so that's been quite nice. So, yeah.
Oh right,
yeah,
wow. Sounds like both of you are really busy people. So thank you so much for joining us and carving out this time to have this conversation going and to continue this conversation, because it's really something that flared up, obviously, with the murder of George Floyd back in, I guess it was May. We're trying to remember. We haven't really looked up the dates. But obviously things have happened before, and it was kind of all a lead up to that point where a lot of things have happened. So could you guys kind of do a little recap of what happened back in May, June, probably a bit before as well, April, May, June. Just kind of to remind us of what has happened in the States, and obviously not just in the States, but what is happening in the UK as well. Chris, why don't you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So you'll remember that there was that, famous scenes that we saw where there was the police officer leaning on the neck of George Floyd, and that kind of went viral, I guess, and I think shocked many people all around the world that racism was just so overtly demonstrated in that act. And I guess what that did for us in the UK was really spark a big debate about, well, is this just an American issue, or is this an issue that happens in the UK? And I think for me, where it really had been something that a lot of people from the BAME, so Black, Asian and minority ethnic community, had kind of just got used to and seen in perhaps not so overt ways, but more subtle ways, they, I guess, felt empowered to actually express that, no, actually, it's not just an American thing. This does happen. It is more subtle, but certainly it does happen. And actually, there are some just as overt ways in the UK, actually. But I think for me, the biggest thing was seeing the shock of lots of my friends, family, neighbours, and the community at large, that it could possibly still be an issue in 2020. And I guess because then lots of people felt empowered to come and talk about it, there's been this last few months where people have really been digging into the issue and think, oh, right, okay, well, what can we do about it?
Thank you. Josie, what was your experience of those months? I've just looked it up. It was the 25th of May when George Floyd was murdered. So the end of May. Did you have more conversations? Did what friends come up to you asking you? What was your experience of those months?
Yeah, I guess firstly for me personally, it was just a really hard time because I think for a lot of Black and ethnic minority people, we are so used to just pushing down the things that we've experienced, because if we were to unpack it, it would just be so painful to confront at points. But I think for a lot of people, it just became too hard to ignore. And it felt as if it was you experiencing trauma, even though it might not have been you. Of course, it wasn't us with George Floyd at the moment, but it was seeing him with his dying that it kind of exasperated trauma within so many people. So yeah, I think for a lot of ethnic minorities, it was dealing with a lot of pain that we had experienced but hadn't really digged up or dwelled in. And thankfully, I have wonderful people around me who were so kind and just wanting to know what was happening and how they could help, and just asking really tough questions of, has there been a time that I have exhibited a microaggression towards you, or has there been a time where you felt as if I haven't really wanted to be your friend because of how different we are, maybe because of ethnicity, sorry. And so, yeah, there has been loads of good conversations that I've had. And yeah, just a lot of introspection as well, and just dealing with, pain as well. So, yeah.
So it'd be interesting, just from thinking of the last conversation, which we had in June, just the kind of steps taken. So you said you had quite a few conversations from there, from that point. What's it been? 5 months? Trying to do the maths in my head quickly there. I don't even know if that's right. But just like, what kind of conversations have you had? What have those looked like? Maybe Chris in Hope Church, what have those conversations looked like? How has that been led through? And then the idea of this conversation will then how are we seeing change? Are we seeing the race conversation? Has there been enough change? What can happen? That's kind of where the conversation would like to take it. But just be interested, after around June, what kind of conversations were you having, Chris, in Hope Church? What did that look like?
Yeah, so for us, we started to, first of all, I guess, kind of reflect, just give people opportunity to absorb and think about the issue. And one way we did that was talking into it, speaking into it. And another way was gathering all those people from a Black, Asian and minority ethnic background, just to come together and just to listen to them. And so I did an interview. It was probably about an hour and a half long. And then we kind of edited it down to about 15 minutes, and we played that on a Sunday morning so that people from our church could just hear and listen to the experiences of people in our church, you know, people they knew and loved, and so that they could see, because, you know, it's great that, you know, so many people came and asked Josie. That, I think that's excellent, but perhaps if you are in a really majority sort of white group, or in a church like that, or in sort of local groups like that, then it's easy to kind of not know how to even start the conversation with someone, especially if you don't know someone. So we wanted to just make that space for people to listen to some voices, and then we put together sort of like a blog and some things for people to just read through and think about. And I guess now we've at the moment we've just kind of offered some books for people to read to help them to engage in and just think through. And our next step will be to do exactly what we're doing tonight, and that is to bring together the groups together again. One thing we're thinking about is how can we maybe equip our leaders that lead small groups to kind of have this conversation. What tools can we give them, and how can we encourage them to start to kind of overcome their own anxieties or nervousness around the topic, and then also to engage with the group and have a productive discussion around it. Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, that's really, really good. Thanks. And Josie, so you said some people came and spoke to you about it. Was there anything that you were involved in that may be similar to what Chris was talking about, where you felt you had space to share any kind of bigger conversations, or was it just the sort of friendship groups that you were in?
Yeah, so as well as like just friendships and stuff like that, with my church, we were able to have recently a Bible study where we delved into what the Bible says about race issues and justice. And it was amazing because it meant they were able to delve into those topics together and to really dig deep into God's heart for these issues, and not just our own words and stuff. And so I think that was a really healthy environment for us to, just talk about what God says about stuff like this and what's going on. And when this first happened, quite similarly to Chris, quite a few of the Black and ethnic minorities people in our church got together, and we just talked through what was going on. And there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of pain that was spoken about, but it just created a really safe space for people to be able to express the pain that they were going through, and to really begin like a process of healing. So, yeah.
That's really helpful. So it's great that you've had those spaces to do that. And I guess before we came on live, we almost got into a whole conversation. We did get into a whole conversation already, so we're kind of repeating ourselves, or it feels like it. But I'd just love to get into that conversation now then. So I was telling you from my experience over the last month, particularly because it's Black History Month, but also I've seen more people sharing books, podcasts, kids coming home with people they're reading about, having to do projects on. I've been reading a couple more books, so it feels like there's at least been more engagement over the last couple months. Has that been your experience, or is that just where I'm at? I'd just be really interested to hear what you're seeing.
I'm not sure if I've seen that much engagement, to be completely honest. I have seen some stuff on like the social medias and stuff like that, but I think a lot of that I've seen has come mostly from ethnic minorities and Black people. And so, I do think that the push for inclusion and potentially for education has probably kind of dwindled a little bit. What I do think is quite encouraging, though, within NHS is that I got an email today from, so I'm part of the scientist training program, which is a program to train scientists within the NHS. And I got an email today they wanted to hear about our experiences as Black and ethnic minorities within the NHS. And yeah, it just seems as if they have been quite, there's been a big push to continue to hear our experiences, to continue to make sure that we are heard, which I thought was really encouraging. But yeah, in general, yeah, with potentially maybe it's just what I'm seeing online or with the people around me, but I have seen that there has been a quieting down of the push to see racism eradicated. So yeah.
And you did share a statistic. It was an American statistic, but there was that statistic of there was a significant proportion of people that are less likely to deal with racism, which is extraordinarily sad and frustrating. Chris, has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, I think so. And I've actually had an opportunity to do a teaching day, which came up recently. And on this teaching day, there was basically a long list of, there was just 10 days. And on each of the different days, most of the people teaching in the UK on biblical matters were kind of white males. And I guess the group that were organising these teaching programmes did get in touch with myself and my brother to say that basically they wanted to have more diversity on the teaching programme and had heard some of our stuff. And so there's a twofold, we had two different types of feelings. One feeling like we're kind of wanted because we're Black, but which you can take negatively, but then actually there's a positive thing that we felt that whilst that doesn't feel so great, what is good is that had we not taken up this opportunity, then it would be a white male dominated teaching program. And if in 10, 20, 30, 40 years time, we don't need to have these types of conversations, well, we'll be more than delighted to be a part of that process. So that's one thing. But in terms of general, I think I'd agree with Josie that I think I'm just seeing a bit of fatigue, a bit of, I guess people just getting tired of the issue and this kind of, I talked about white fragility, which is the idea that all of us in our human nature can be fragile. And when it comes to race matters, there can be a fragile nature to us. So when someone talks or uses words which we're uncomfortable with, like white privilege or critical race theory or other things, then what can happen is that I know people can kind of disengage. They can see things going on like riots, violence, and they can start to make excuses. Well, this can't be right. That's not good. So therefore, I'm going to step back away from this conversation. And so I think that there is probably a natural, it's been going on for months now. It's not so prevalent in the news. It's died away. And so therefore, it's easy for me to just disengage slightly because I'm tired of talking about it. And I think that's what I'm seeing. But not from Friends International Guildford, who are
Well,
still doing a bit.
I was just thinking it's probably as well people are so much more focused on themselves again with COVID and lockdown that you again are really quickly in trying to survive and you can only see your own world again, which I think for a lot of us means it's a wide world, sadly.
I'll be interested just to, because you used some terms there, we started a bit of a conversation, as I said, that with white fragility there's quite a book that I wouldn't recommend. I'll be honest, I've read it that has that title. It's an interesting concept because it happens, you can see it. Someone says, I've had this racist experience. The challenge generally coming from the majority is, did you really? Was that really what was intended? How do you know their motivations? Is really critiquing that experience to a point where you're like, well, I might as well not talk to you about it. So there's that. And then there's also, how dare you call me fragile? I'm not racist. We're not having this conversation. And there's this tendency to shut the conversation down. And so it's quite a hard term to wrestle with as a white person, because it's immediately like, what are you calling me? But I think it's really important to just unpick that a bit. And what are your experiences of that? Because those are the ones that I've seen. And how can we overcome that when, yeah, sure, that it's a negative thing, so it feels negative as a white person to hear that about yourself. But like, how do we get past that in a conversation? Have you successfully found a way through that? I'd just be interested in your interactions. Josie, did you have any experience of that?
I haven't had experience in terms of me in conversation with someone, but you do see a lot of it online. And I think one thing that I've noticed recently is a push to kind of decredit racism as, or people's experience of a racism, or trying to fight towards seeing more justice as just calling it kind of Marxism and leaving it as that. And I do see that as, I do see that as a way to kind of stop the conversation there and to not push forward in actually what are people's experiences with it and what can we do moving forward. And yeah, I've just seen a lot of pushing towards seeing it as something that is like fighting for justice, potentially as something as bad rather than something as good. Yeah,
I've definitely heard the Marxist term being thrown around.
And a lot of the times people will just say that and the conversation will just end there, or there is no space for further like unpicking of what does that even mean, or
totally.
And it just stops the discussion on racism in its tracks, really.
Chris, what's your experience of that? Have you found a way to navigate it?
I think it doesn't just happen with race, it happens in every area, so with rape, someone gets raped and then the questions are to the victim, not necessarily, well, what were you wearing? And how did you? And so it happens in lots of different areas. I think the biggest place that I saw it online was with the diversity production, in Britain's Got Talent, and 25,000 complaints, and it was all about the Black Lives Matter. And yet, when you take the performance as a whole, they basically try to showcase 2020, and the point of it was really to point towards hope and celebration, and isn't as good about the NHS and celebrating different parts, but just reflecting on different things that happened, and everything focused on that one scene. And it's this kind of cancel culture. So that, I think that's where you see it online. But I remember having a conversation with some people, some neighbours, and just they were asking me this question, and then I started to share. And as soon as I started to share, they were very quickly dismissive. Or, well, if it wasn't overt, like if someone didn't use like the N-word, they would then say, well, was it really because you're black, or did you have that experience just because you're a man, or because of what you're wearing, because you're wearing a hoodie or something, or and how do you know it was your skin color thing? And it's like, well, I just know. And so I think it's just easy. It's easy. I think it's easy in every area of life for people to make excuses for either their behaviour or. We don't want to feel. No one wants to feel uncomfortable. That's the reality, isn't it? Yeah. And so, if I can deflect some of it, then I can just rest easy in my comfort bubble and not really have to engage in the topic. And that's a much more easier position to sit in than it is to kind of confront our own unconscious biases, which we all have. This isn't a black-white issue. This is a people issue and a justice issue that we all need to engage in.
Yeah.
There's a lot in that that's sort of set my brain going, but I think it's also important to note that with white privilege and those who kind of wrestle with that phrase and kind of get defensive, it's that, again, like you said, with the fragility of people when they're in the majority, getting challenged and having to realize that their culture isn't necessarily the culture, the way of doing things. And just a touch of humility would help these conversations go a lot further than they do, and just go, okay, I'll take the hit, sure, let's explore what this looks like, and I'll ask a few more questions. But then there's also, with privilege, there's all sorts of types of privilege. Like statistically speaking, if you're good looking, there's doors that will open to you that won't open if you're not. if you're able, rather than disabled, if you're a man rather than a woman, there are certain privileges that certain groups of people will have that, statistically speaking, you will find. But for some reason, this white privilege thing gets more heat than any of those others, and it's interesting just watching people react to that. It's like, okay, we need to work through why are we getting defensive, and actually hearing people for their experience, and just letting them speak, and working out, well, if this is me, okay, I can work this through. And I don't, from a perspective of Friends International and working across cultures, there's so much in there that we kind of do working across cultures. And I see some of this race stuff is actually it's cultural clash. We're talking English, but we're speaking past each other. That's me just sort of thought.
I'm aware of the time, and I'd love for us to kind of move the conversation to what can we do that we actually see change. And we know it needs to be a systemic change, because it is a systemic problem. It's not just something we can talk about a little bit on social media and therefore it's kind of solved, but it goes so deep. But what kind of advice would you give to me and Phil as well, or as we are white people living in the south of England here in Guildford? How can we help that change, that we see justice happening? And I know that is a massive question, and that involves a lot of things probably. But what would you advise us and anyone who's listening who wants to learn more? What are the steps that we can take, and how can we make it a lasting change rather than just a thing we engage with it and it's a book we put away once we've read it and that's it, and we can kind of tick it off our list? I think that's off way of thinking, but actually how can we change? I know it's a big question.
No, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is to keep being uncomfortable and to keep unpicking those unconscious biases, and even within myself I've had to to really just look at the things that I think, and to make sure that I am continuing to unpick my unconscious biases. I was watching this documentary yesterday, and it spoke about the reaction of British people whenever a group from another country immigrates to this country. And I think the majority of things that were said was that it's usually about people feeling as if they're coming to take their jobs, or coming to cause disruption here. And me, as I was born here, I have lived here all my life. Those are things that potentially I could have even picked up in terms of different groups that are moving here. And that's not helpful in terms of me creating friendships and wanting to build connection with the incredible different cultures that live within the UK, and to not be insular within my own groups. And so I think, a great way to continue to bring change and to continue to fight for justice is to continually look inward and to see, why did I think that? Or why did I think that about that person? Is that correct? And just continually doing that, really.
Thank you. Chris, any good advice?
I think for individuals, I think so like Josie expressed it quite well. It's reflect, look in, reflect on yourself, and our human nature is to get into groups, to build communities, to grow bubbles. We're not made to be alone. We're made to be in community, and so that's our human nature. But it's also, once we've got our bubble, it's easy to close that off. And what we need to be encouraged to do is to continually look outwards. How can I welcome and include, and that means thinking outside of the type of people. The other thing I would mention is that is to kind of look to embrace, again, a bit like what Josi said, embrace the differences that other cultures bring to you. And it's easy to kind of look at difference and think negative, and let's try to look past that and look at difference and think, well, what's positive, and how can that actually make me better, make my group better and my circle better. And especially if you're in the workplace, you know, it's really easy to seek after your own kind and to look to people in your leadership team or in the groups of influence, someone like you. And well, let's try to look out. Let's just think about that a bit more. And it's not about tokenism, because I don't pick a random black guy to be, you know, that won't bless anyone if they're not equipped for the job. That's really not gonna. We need gifted people of all colours and all races and all genders to be represented, but not for tokenism, for their ability. And that means thinking about training programs, accessibility. How can we get more people from different backgrounds in? I know universities do this a lot. How can they get people from all sorts of different backgrounds into the universities? And I think from every single level, we need to be thinking about that, especially in the church and, you know, across charities, organizations, etc. Accessibility is key.
I think that is such a good advice as well for any students living on campus, because it is so easy to stay in your little country bubble, or the people you share the same language with, but that means you're just gonna miss out on so much. And I think one of the greatest ways to engage with other cultures, I always think, is food. That is such a good way. That is such a good way just to experience wealth, and it's something so positive unless it's super hot.
So true.
But I found food is something that you can easily share with others, and you can just see how other cultures work, what they eat, and therefore there's always such a natural bonding over food. So I'd love for anyone who's watching to get together with your flat, if they're from different countries, great, and just cook together and eat together and try each other's foods and typical dishes that you might eat in your home country. I think that's a great way of bonding and finding first differences as well, and actually things you really appreciate about each other. I'm aware of the time, and I'm really sorry to cut this conversation short. I'm aware there is so much more we could be talking about, but are there any last words, any final advice? And we might just call you back again in a few months' time and continue this conversation as an ongoing thing that keeps us accountable as well, I think. But is there anything you would like to pass on to the students that are here, or anyone who's watching? It's fine if not. No pressure to make up really impactful, treatable things right now.
Pithy statements.
I just think the key thing is, let's just all remember that no one's perfect. That, come on, let's just keep looking out, and we all. Let me share a very quick story. I was getting my hair cut, right, and I go there every single week, every month, especially, by Colombian barbers, and I had made assumptions about these guys because of their language and because of where they come from. And so then my Colombian barber was telling me about how he wasn't going to be cutting my hair anymore because he's just got a job as a vet, because he's a fully qualified vet, and because of his language, it just struggled to get a job, and so that's why he was cutting hair. And you know what? I was surprised, and I had made assumptions about him because of his language. And that is just a great example of unconscious bias and how we can make assumptions about people based on just in their language, let alone anything else. And so let's all be people that just recognize that, and let's push past and get to know people, not make assumptions because of what we see on the outside.
Yeah, mate, nailed it. That's so good.
There's nothing to add there.
We could just close on that. I think that's so true, and that is the heart of Friends International, and we see it all the time. Students who struggle with English and just taking a little bit more time you find someone who's extraordinarily clever, for one, and a wonderful human being, just letting them express themselves takes a bit longer. So excellent. That's good.
I think that's a really good point to finish off this evening. Thank you so much again, Josie and Chris. We really appreciate you taking this time. We're going to call you back in a few months' time, and we're going to continue this conversation, because it is important to continue this conversation. The next Let's Talk About is actually in 2 weeks, when we're going to be talking about the American election results. It's going to be a biggie.
Gosh.
American on the team, so if anyone wants to join, to join in. But yeah, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much again, and we hope to see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.